We've got some.
Hey, I'm Luis.
And I'm Luis.
And you're listening to the Content is Profit podcast.
We spent the last 4 years learning the strategies and techniques from some of the top marketers in the world on how to create content that turns into profit. And today, we're bringing them to you so you can take action immediately and start creating real content momentum.
If you'd like to learn more about how to turn your content into profit, go to contentisprofit.com. Oh, yeah. Let's go. So today's guest is probably one of the most badass guests we've had on the show. We got to know him after. Whoa, what happened here? We got to know him after our awesome guest, Amber Furman. We then noticed that his friend oh, wow. Okay, hold on. Rewind.
Wow.
Let me restart my cheat sheet. Okay, this is the beautiful thing.
Are you okay there?
This is my beautiful thing about going live. Okay, my cheat sheet just like
round number two.
Let's go. Today's guest is probably one of the most badass guests we've had on the show. We got to know him after an awesome guest, Amber Furman, introduced him to us. We then noticed that he is friends with previous badass guest, Garrett Bake, as well.
That is right. Does that make us badass by association? Hopefully. Yeah. Either way, today's guest started his career as a SWAT operator, then transitioning into infantry leader in Afghanistan. Impressive. And finally, turning himself into a successful business owner. What a career.
That's right. He is the founder of Natalie Production, a content production agency, and he is the host of Be a Tactical Leader podcast. So if you want to learn how to run your operations like a well-trained military force, you better listen to this.
Yes, sir. Can't wait for this. Please welcome host of Be a Tactical Leader podcast, marketing tactician, and contender for the Content is Profit #1 badass, Zack Knight.
What's up, guys?
Welcome, Zack.
Welcome to the show, my man. Thank you for...
You're not badass by relation. Sorry, guys.
Especially after all those mistakes at the beginning, you know. But you know what? Just like you hear...
Wow, throw me on the bus, man.
Just like you hear from some other military people, I always hear like, everything, you have a plan, and then as soon as things start to go on, you're like, plan B, plan C, things go sideways. And I feel that's what happened today with the introduction.
I mean, Zach, that was definitely on purpose.
Naturally. You did it really well. It was perfect.
Zach, I just want to make this remark right here. While I was reading the name of your podcast, right? Be a Tactical Leader. I realized the acronym is BATL, which it could be spelled as battle. Was that on purpose?
It was all my strategy, my coaching, everything's battle plan, battle buddies. I really took it from the military and tried to play it off a little bit.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I love it.
Love it. I mean, I think we're getting right into the meat right away. So we might have to go back to your story real quick, but I'm very interested because a lot of people like on the content space struggle with the name of whatever they're launching, right? Like we did for the longest time. And then we're like, you know what? The show is going to be called Content is Profit because that is what we believe in. That's a message that we want to send out. Whoever loves it is going to listen to it. We're going to make the message be the filter. So tell me a little bit like why you chose that. You just said you named everything after that. How do you come to that? Like, I'm sure there's a story behind it.
Yeah, honestly, originally, so the podcast itself is Tactical Leadership, the podcast, and it's more of the stories of tactical leaders throughout different industries. What came from that is Be a Tactical Leader, and that's the coaching brand and everything you see that I actually represent pushing forward. So it goes from the show where the inception was my background. You know, I'm very focused on tactics. Tactics themselves are, you know, the art of getting stuff done essentially. And then my journey of leadership as I've gone through to talk to other leaders. So there you go. Tactical leadership. I wanted to see how people could create tactics or use tactics in their own journeys to create successful winning cultures. And from that came, how do you be a tactical leader, right? It's what's a great tactic. It's how to actually do it, how to accomplish it. You know, everything's great as strategy, but you'd have to have action behind it to get it done.
Absolutely. Love it. Sweet, man. Like, thank you. You literally just gave the framework on how to name your stuff, which I feel like people get so hung up in that. So,
yeah, but I will say this. We've noticed that it's important to have like a proprietary name to things.
Yes.
Literally by naming your process differently, that the process can be very similar to somebody else's process.
Absolutely.
That can differentiate yourself and like carve a space in the marketplace for you.
Absolutely. Dude, Zach, so where you come from, man? Because I mean, we explained how we met you and we had a call and it was fascinating. I'm like, man, I wish we could like continue this conversation because you have your hands everywhere. And I feel like tactics have something to do with it that allows you to do this. But like, who are you? Where are you coming from? And why do you do what you do now?
Yeah, man, it's a long, boring story from Atlanta. I'm actually where the
jokes in there to make it fun stuff. You know, fancy. You ready for my joke?
I need you to do something with it, man. It's boring. But like y'all mentioned, you know, I started as a police officer in Smyrna, which is just outside of Atlanta. It's where the new Brave Stadium got built. So I started as a police officer there, did all the fun, cool guy stuff from SWAT to narcotics to you name it, had some fun there. And honestly, it started kind of like a lot of police officers do. I wanted to give back to my local community. I grew up playing T-ball in that city and I wanted to give back to that. And then along the way, I kind of had the realization that police officers or myself as a police officer, I wasn't making the impact that I really truly wanted to make. You know, you end up finding out you're there to respond and report, not necessarily serve and protect. It really kind of the culture shifted toward it. So I left that my 2 weeks notice from the police department, went directly into basic training. So at 28 years old, I was the grandpa of basic training. Went from making decent money to making about 15 grand a year for that first year. Is pretty awful as a private in the Army. But I spent about 15 months in training, went through basic training, went through officer school, went through infantry school, got through all of that. Finally, thankfully, started my first business during all of that. It's my security firm. Spent about 6 months running that and then found out I was getting deployed, went to Afghanistan for most of 2018, 2019, the back end of 2018 into the majority of 2019 with the Army. We were attached to a Special Forces unit, did some stuff out in Afghanistan, and then came back about a year and change ago and kind of just put my nose to the ground and came back with a different perception of life, you know, a different value attached to, are we really accomplishing what we say we are? And are we really putting forth as much effort as we possibly can? And I really came back with a different level of motivation attached to that.
Yeah.
Wow. Incredible, man. Thank you for sharing. There's definitely zero boring in that story. I find it fascinating.
I'm curious, when did you say you came back from Afghanistan?
I came back in August of 2019.
Wow, so very recently.
Yeah, and thank you for your service.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not originally from this country, but we love this country. I mean, we've been here for about 10 years, so I appreciate you guys, what you do, especially from being a policeman to a police officer to the military. So I appreciate you. We wish our country had that instead of the corrupt people that are there. Anyways, super. I went super sideways there. Yeah, sorry.
That could be a podcast. That could be a podcast
on its own. So we often talk here in the show that military people and athletes have this resiliency to continue, right? Like we make mistakes, we continue going. Like we're stubborn at some degree on the things that we want to achieve, and we continue to do it, and we find different ways. And our theory is that separates, you know, those two kind of people from the regular packs, and then we're potentially able to achieve something else. And I say we because we play soccer from very young age all the way through college here in D1 schools and so on. That was the dream, right? So I think the mentality is there. Do you think that is a thing? Like, did it help you kind of start these businesses, continue on that first year of training that you made like 15 grand a year, right? Like, I'm sure that wasn't easy for you or your family. What are the things and the elements that you took from your military or police officer's life that you brought into the business side that helped you move forward and achieve what you have now?
You know, I think the best correlation, especially between athletes, military, law enforcement, the best correlation is that we're trained to accomplish a mission, right? We're trained to accomplish one goal. And that's whether that's win the game, score a goal, you know, fight a battle, whatever that may be. You're so dead set on this is your one thing, right? And that's such a great, I believe there's a book out there called Your One Thing. I believe that's the title of it. It's slipping my mind at the moment. But, you know, when you can focus on that one thing in particular and kind of set the distractions to the side. It's difficult. There you go. So, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When you can have that level of focus, and attach it to your daily grind, your daily hustle, and you do that for days and weeks in a row, it just keeps mounting, right? You just keep moving towards success. And I think that's one huge thing that law enforcement and military taught me. I'm sure that's what y'all learned as athletes. I grew up playing baseball, never made it to as fancy as y'all did, but that's something, you unite as a team to accomplish one similar mission. It's no different than how you should operate a business.
Wow. That's amazing. I'm curious, going back to your story when you said that year that you made $15,000, right? That big change on salary. You said that same year was the same one that you started your first business. Was it necessity that you started it for, or was it because I'm guessing, I'm trying to understand what was your mindset at that moment, right? Because you wanted to protect and serve, right? That's why you joined the military, but at the same time, I'm guessing you needed to be taken care of financially as well. Everybody needs, right? So this business was born because of a necessity, or because you saw you had this business mindset at that moment already, and you saw space in the marketplace. I was like, I can actually take advantage of this and build a business in here. Or was there any other reason?
Honestly, I wasn't business minded at all. Government doesn't teach you anything about business at all. It went from, I went to basic training in November of 2016, and I started that first business in July of 2017. So about 7 months in, and it wasn't out of necessity. It wasn't out of, I had to make more money. As I was going through, I was going to make more money, and I'm on the National Guard side. So I wasn't going full active duty, where I knew December and the first of 2018, I was going to be coming back home. I had to do something. And the reason I started that first business is called Night Protection Services. It's still running to this day. It's a security consulting firm that focuses on providing answers and solutions, where I kind of mentioned, as a police officer, you're really designated to respond and report. You're not necessarily designated to prevent crime other than by being present. And it goes back to another great book I absolutely love is Start With Why, and Simon Sinek. I love his books. And a lot of people are talking about Start With Why these days, and it almost gets kind of cheesy. But when you look at it, you internalize what that is. My why origin story behind that first business was I responded to an audible alarm. You get them 5 or 6 times a shift. You show up, you check your doors, you make sure everything's locked up. Well, this time it wasn't locked up. The back door was kicked in and the house was ransacked, kind of like you see in a movie. TV's gone, laptop's gone, the dresser knocked over. And as a police officer, you go in and you have to, of course, clear the house, make sure whoever was there is gone. And then you call the homeowner and say, hey, we need you to come home. There's an incident at the house. We need you to come essentially inventory what could be missing, because we have to report that. And as they're going through an inventory, and it's a young husband and wife, they just bought this home within the last year. And there's a sense of like violation attached, right? You get victimized in that sense. Somebody's in your personal space, and it's very emotional. And as they're going through, they're both upset, they're both crying, and all of a sudden, the young woman, she freaks out and runs to the bedroom, like takes off sprinting. I'm like, okay, this can't be good. So I follow her back into the bedroom, and she dumps over her jewelry box. It had already been gone through, but she like dumps it over and starts searching through everything. And as she's searching, she's looking for one thing, and she stops, goes through everything, and just starts bawling. And she said, my grandmother died 2 weeks ago, and her heirloom ring that she gave me right before she died is gone. How do I get that back?
Wow.
Jewelry is one of those you can't track jewelry, right? There's no serial number. I mean, unless it's just really that exquisite, you can't really track it. So as a police officer, as difficult as that was, she's like, how do we stop this from ever happening to us or anybody we love ever again? As a police officer, you cannot answer that question, because if you say, get this alarm system and this lock, and it doesn't work, you're going to get sued. Your city's going to get sued. Your police department is going to get sued. And the liability is just so extreme that you're literally told, do not make that recommendation, because you're not allowed to absorb that type of liability. So I tell that story because night protection actually came from I want to be able to give that option. I want to tell you exactly how. If I take liability, it's on me, it's on my company. I put my name on the business because I don't want to shy away from the fact that I'm giving you my personal recommendation of what's going to keep you the safest. And that's expanded from homeowners where we started, residential, all the way up to high rises here in Atlanta. And we even travel at this point to different organizations, corporations. And the goal there, the why there is my overarching why is I want to help people who can't or won't help themselves. Two very big distinctions, but in that type of situation, they can't help themselves. So I want to be that person that can help them.
Yeah. Well, that is pretty incredible. I love the story on how your mindset work on pretty much backtracking the problem, and it's like, there's a root to this problem that hasn't been addressed yet. Like, why do we need to wait until something happens to take action instead of being proactive and take action before, right? And I'm curious, do you apply that to your business? And with that, I want to throw in another question as well, which is, you just mentioned 2 books, right? Start with the why and the one thing. So you got the why and focus, right? And for us personally, this year has been all about focus. This was the year that we finally, turned our offer of like 20 different services to just one service, and we started focusing on that. And literally, we have seen results like crazy, like we've never seen in the last 4 years. So we know the importance of focus. What happens when you mix that with your why? Like, what happens in there as a business, as an entrepreneur?
It's insane when you actually can align yourself with your passion. And I correlate passion with why. I think you're going to be passionate about your why if your why is deep enough. The why I just told you is everything. I own 6 businesses at this point, and every one of those businesses feeds off of. So I have the protection company. I also have a domestic violence nonprofit where, again, I help those who can't or won't help themselves. Now I have the production company where it comes to people in a different sense. The only clients I onboard are clients that have a why. One of my clients has a disabled child that they want to be able to provide generational wealth where that child doesn't ever have to worry about struggling because they might not be able to have a job. Well, that why, I can take your why, apply it to my why. Well, you can't necessarily help yourself in this situation. I can help you achieve your why. And if you keep focusing down that level of, you keep that passion, because that's what gets you up in the morning. If you're struggling to get up in the morning and you're like dragging, trying to get up, but you hit snooze 18 times. I get up at 4 o'clock every morning. First alarm, it's off, it's up, I'm gone. Head to the gym, get my day started, because my why is such a driving force. And if you don't have that figured out yet, if you haven't sat down to determine your why and you're dragging get out of bed, or you think you have your why, but you're still dragging getting out of bed, your why is not a big enough motivator yet. You really kind of got to grind down into what is that's going to get me out of bed and make the devil say, oh, he's up this morning, right? Like I love that saying, make them think, oh crap, he's up, and then start raising all get out,
So I feel like you've had your why figure out for quite some time. Like you speak with so passion. So okay. So that's where my question is. So when you explain it, right? Like it feels you're passionate about it, right? And you have a force that drives you forward. We've shared a little bit of like why we do what we do now, or why we started the company. We have family back home that we want to bring back on. We want to provide for them because they provided an amazing opportunity. That for us, gets us moving every single day. That, and now my family, my son, and different things that come here. And then later we can talk about the impact in Venezuela, that we can go back and rebuild the country with other people that are doing amazing things, right? These are massive endeavors, and we need to be able to get up at 4 a.m. in the morning and be like, holy crap, like they woke up, right? So when you explain this to us, I feel the passion. But when I just mentioned that I feel that you have it figured out, you're like, no way. So my question was gonna go like, well, when did you figure it out? Now that you don't have it figured out, like, what is that process, right? Because a lot of people might be struggling with their why. We did for many years. I did for many years personally, right?
I personally feel I still do. Like, I know part of my why, which is our family, but at the same time, I'm so curious to hear your answer.
So I mean, that's where I'm going, right? Because if I personally feel like if we wait to figure out the why, then nothing happens, right? So we have to like execute while we're doing this, and then as you execute, you're gonna like it's gonna start uncovering, right? It's like the fog moves away. So for you, what's that process like? How did it start, and what are you currently doing to continue that momentum with your why?
Yeah, and you have to realize it's very fluid, right? My why from the first business I started went from being very macro to now I'm very, very focused, and that's something I've developed more recently. It really shifted in Afghanistan. We lost a handful of guys during operations that I was directly involved in planning. It's really tough when a young guy. He was about 3 months from getting out of the military, left a wife and kids. And, it was one of his last operations and he's not coming home. And when you go through experiences where you realize the value, the time value, like you're not getting that time back, right? They're not there with their family this holiday season. So it turns into almost a level of guilt where should I be sitting down with my family for holidays when they can't, when they don't have that family member? So I started correlating that in my head. Am I really doing enough to honor the memories of those that have served next to me, that have been around me? And starting with why is so powerful. It's a great starting point. But I shifted it to a militaryism is reverse engineering. You kind of backward plan where you have your goal, you have your mission, you know what you need to accomplish, and you plan backward from there. So instead of starting with why, I've shifted it to ending with why. I've shifted it to legacy. What am I doing today, every single day, that's going to help me achieve something that not my name's going to be remembered, but the impact is going to be remembered. And once you start kind of shifting to long term, that goal gets really big. That end goal gets really big. And again, you start correlating things to so much emotion that at the end of the day, like for me, where am I going to end? Because we're all going to end at some point. It could be today. It could be tomorrow. It could be the next time I go overseas. Yeah. What am I doing today that's going to leave something before that happens? And when you start correlating your legacy with every move you're making, to me, it changes the game where every single person on my podcast, I ask, what is the legacy you want to leave on the world? Because that's such a deep question and that every single answer has been different. And I'm writing a book. I'm hoping to release it next year called The Legacy of Leadership, where I'm kind of putting a summary of all those together with my personal experience of this is what leaders are focused on. They're not focused on today or yesterday. They're not worried about that obstacle they keep beating their head against. They know that obstacle is going to go away. They're going to pivot. They're going to shift. They're going to get around COVID, and they're going to keep moving forward because at the end of the day, the end is what's most important.
Yeah. Oh, man. Sorry. I know that you might have a question there, but like, total selfish question right here. And I feel like some people might have the same question. We have this internal fire. I love when you talk about, legacy and what you've done. Just so you know, I'm going to be first in line to get the book. So just let me know. But sometimes we can feel that maybe people that are closer to us might not be in the same page, right? Like, or they not might fully understand what you're trying to achieve or why you even trying to go for that legacy, right? Like, I feel like it's few of us that go there, right? Or have, the capacity to actually go and try something like that, right? Especially because we've very blessed to actually chase our dreams from very little. Like we went to Europe and play soccer, which is what we wanted to do. We understand not a lot of people have those opportunities, and we have people in our corner to support that. Now, there might be some people out there, and I felt it once or twice with the people that are close to me that we're trying to explain what we're building, how we're building it, or why we're building, why we're going there. It's like, to us, or at least to me, it's very important that we can impact thousands of people with the show, for example, right? Like, just inspire of one person like expressing themselves in front of a camera because they can help so many people, right? And then that change can be extrapolated later. So what happens? How do you deal with people that are not completely in tune with your legacy? Do we convince them? How do we do it? Do we have to sell them on that legacy? Like, what is the operating procedure to deal with that person that might not be understanding what your legacy is all about?
It's kind of like sales. You can't sell to somebody that doesn't want to buy. It's impossible. You can't convince the unconvincible. And I'll be frank, this past Christmas, you're talking 3 days ago, I had parents question, are you really doing the right thing or should you go get a job? I have an MBA. I have 2 credentials in the security industry where I could walk into a security firm very high up making plenty of 6 figures. And I'm still questioned to this day. Are you doing the right thing? Shouldn't you be putting in a resume or working on that or be applying to jobs? Man, when I tell you it is a constant struggle of people around me that, Gary Vee, we talked about kind of before the show. Gary Vee kind of opened my eyes to sometimes you got to cut certain things out of your life, right? And Jim Rohn said it best, you are the sum of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And I wholeheartedly believe that, where if you're going to surround yourself around folks that, want to drag you down, because that's what I see it as. I see it as dragging you down. You have that negativity because we already have those thoughts. Trust me, I think all the time, it would be so much easier to go get a job that just pays me to sit in the office 8 hours a day and then I could just shut it down. How easy would that be? And then I remember my why. Is that really how I'm going to accomplish what I want to do in my life? Is that really how I'm going to leave a legacy? And that's, again, it all correlates back to what is my mission? What is my purpose? I get a lot of negativity. I've had police chiefs try to shut down my business because I told them the cops aren't the answer. And I said, look, law enforcement it's a piece of the puzzle, but it's not the puzzle. And I had people say, you're going to fail because you're saying cops are wrong. I'm like, I never said cops are wrong, but it's all about, you always have that negativity. So it turns into, you need people like the 2 of you. I have a business partner, Jesse Smith, man, he keeps me grounded. Thankfully we never have a bad day on the same day. He'll have a bad day, then I'll have a bad day. And we go back and forth. And, you have to have those people where you can just be like vulnerable to, right? Vulnerability is the number 1 characteristic of a leader, in my opinion. And if you can be vulnerable to somebody close to your circle like that, and they can put that boot up your butt and say, get back to it. You got to complain, you got to whine. Now get back to it. You have to have those people because you have so many people that are doubting you every single day.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, this is extremely important, for hopefully anybody that is listening to this, whether they're going to pursue a business or whether they want to get a regular job. I think it is important to know who you're surrounding yourself with, right? And avoid that negativity and that toxicity. So thank you so much for sharing that. And, you mentioned that you have 6 businesses. I didn't know that. I thought you had 2 businesses, right?
I kept that. I did not tell him that.
The production company and the security firm. So when you said 6, I'm like, wow, that is incredible, right? But at the same time, right, and this might be a little contradicting. We can get, like, if you have any challenging ideas, please bring them on, right? But we were talking about focus. So immediately, as you said, six businesses, I'm like, wow, like, that seems like a lot, right? Like, we're managing one, and it's a challenge, right? So, well, he's managing one, and I'm like cheering here on the sidelines, right? And so you say 6, and I'm like, wow, man, that is crazy. How does he keep his focus on, on all of them? And immediately my mind was, it must be that tactical leadership, right, that you were talking about. And now you're talking about vulnerability, right? And that is the number 1 characteristic of a leader. So I would like to transition this a little bit into that, be a tactical leader conversation, because I am so curious, how do you do with all these 6 businesses? If you don't mind me asking, what are the 6 businesses as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned the domestic violence nonprofit. That's business number 3. The 4th is a real estate holdings firm that houses, we buy pre-COVID, we were planning on buying apartment complexes that will house people going through our domestic violence programs. And the domestic violence nonprofit, our leading program is women's self-defense. So we really focus on that piece of where nonprofits are great, but if you can't teach a lasting habit, you're just throwing money at a problem that's not getting solved. So I feel like we're solving, not getting victimized again by teaching self-defense. And then I mentioned Jesse earlier. He and I own the Worldwide Dance Challenge, and then My Creative District, which we talked about the summit that's coming up off air. But both of those I have part ownership in, where the Worldwide Dance Challenge is an international dance competition. We're streaming to 125 countries in the first 7 months straight to the website. That's huge. It's in the middle of season 1 right now. And then My Creative District is the parent company that essentially is talent development over that, where week 3, we had a young kid, Angelo from South Africa, come on the show. By week 6, he was signed to Universal and 10x'd his revenue in South Africa.
Wow.
So you look at all of that. To throw another curveball at you, I've been on active duty military orders since April. Due to COVID and due to the civil unrest, all the riots that happened, I was in charge of several hundred soldiers here in Atlanta, just managing testing sites and security around. And now I'm full-time in a school on Fort Benning. Because of that, I'm getting promoted to a captain in the Army. So now I'm in a full-time, I think. Yeah, thanks. Maybe. But now I'm, 9 to 5. I'm in a classroom learning more. And all of that goes back to one thing. And it sounds crazy. Yeah, there's a lot of shit happening. Excuse me, a lot of stuff happening. I know we're live. We can't bleep that. Sorry. A lot of stuff happening. And I say it goes back to one thing. It goes back to 2 things. The first one is each one of those pieces feed off each other. The dance challenge, the purpose partner is our nonprofit, where now the nonprofit is a worldwide organization getting its message out there, where we have a podcast, Surviving to Thriving. The podcast, that's the name of the nonprofit. It's the purpose partner of the dance challenge. So we feed everything into each other, and it just keeps going. The security firm obviously plays a part in all of that, with the housing, with the individuals. So literally it all feeds into helping those that can't or won't help themselves. The dance challenge seems kind of off the wall, but my business partner used to dance with Justin Timberlake, Rihanna. I mean, he's been there, done that. He was part of like the Step Up movies. And then all of a sudden COVID hits and he loses hand over fist, right? And he calls me up one day. We're in a mastermind together. He calls me up and he said, I don't know what to do. I can't do anything right now. I'm like, yes, you can. And this is what we're going to do. And we came up with this idea. That's a very short version. There's a lot more that goes into that, of course.
Yeah,
I bet.
But that then it turned into his why. He wants to help every dancer in every part of the world that can't come to America for American Idol. So You Think You Can Dance, World of Dance. All you need on that show is a cell phone and 2G Wi-Fi. And that's where the production company came from. We created the production company to then edit all of that together, where now you have a performance and a 3-minute audition reel that you can submit to somebody when you wouldn't have had that otherwise. Right. So again, they all feed off of each other. And at the end of the day, the military, it is my service piece for sure. But it's teaching me how to manage people on a higher level, a higher skill. Where else can you learn leadership than on a battlefield where you say 2 words under gunfire and people move? Otherwise, lives are lost. And one of the biggest things, one of my quotes that I love, I wouldn't say my quote, I'm sure I stole it from somebody, but you mentioned my acronym earlier, BATL. And I have a lot of things that I talk about from the battlefield to the boardroom. And you talk about be a tactical leader in that battlefield. We all fight to be leaders in our own right, and taking those from different industries into the boardroom, and lots of life lessons. So it really, again, turns back to that one focus of I want to help people that can't or won't help themselves. And that keeps me focused on each of those different pieces. And then they all feed off of each other, which is a really long-winded way to say I'm a very busy man.
But I understand it now. Like I love the part that they all feed into each other. I mean, definitely you seem to be an extremely busy person, but you seem a busy person with a real purpose, right? A real why behind you. And you mentioned
I think, hold on, but I think it's busy with execution, right? Because
exactly.
I don't want the busy to be taken as, hey, I'm just doing stuff. It's like with tactical execution, right? It's like, hey, we're doing this because of this reason, and then this is going to help these people, and this is the impact.
I'm sure we've all heard that phrase that is like, a business is not the same as busyness. Like people confuse those two, and I feel, I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I feel like I get caught up in the busyness and not necessarily doing the things that are gonna move the business forward. And I'm like, oh, I don't have enough time, but I'm just, maybe investing my time in the activities, not in the right activities. And you mentioned kind of like this term that you took from the military, which I personally think it has been a term that has got a lot of attention in the business world, entrepreneurial world, which is reverse engineer, right? Like, let's get the goal, reverse engineer it, and then we move on from there. So I'm guessing that is how you run all 6 of your companies, and that is how it makes it attainable for you, right? Create the right amount of steps that your capacity can fulfill with your business partners and your team members. But in all this, I am like, okay, people know about reverse engineering and they do it, right? They go, okay, this is my big goal. They do all the math that they have to do. This is the number of calls I have to do. This is the number of the piece of content I have to create. Yet people don't do it. Is it just because of the why? Is there anything behind there that influence people to not take the right actions to complete the reverse engineer plan that people create? Is that a step of the, be a tactical leader?
It is, and I think it's something that a lot of folks get overwhelmed very quickly when you start talking about micro content and trying to put all this out there. If you really look at the definition of tactic or tactical, it really focuses on an action or a strategy carefully planned to achieve a specific end. And that specific end, you have to define that. Again, you reverse engineer. So you find that specific end. What is that end goal, that end state? And it could be of the day. It could be of the week, of the month, of the year. I always love doing it. We talk about reverse engineering, and you talk about maybe a content strategy. Where do you want your content to be in a year? All right. What about at month 11? What do you have to have achieved by month 11 to reach that goal? And you take another step back at month 10, and you can do that by month. A 30-day plan, I think, is much more attainable and achievable by people, because you start looking at, a year, and that's a lot of content, right? Or that's a lot of stuff you got to do. And if you can stack a bunch of 30 days on each other, you'll be amazed by what you can get done if you start planning it in that, where at 30 days, I want to have this achieved. All right. Now at 29 days, I have to have this. At 28 days, I have to have this. And you work all the way down to that. And it's like, all of a sudden I have to make one post today. And it can be that simple, where people just get so overwhelmed by the end state, they forget that it's step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that 5-meter target compared to that end goal. But you have to be able to break that down in order to kind of break it apart where it's not so overwhelming.
Yeah, dude, I love it. And to bring a little bit of perspective, like right now, like with our specific case, I feel like if we would have said 9 months ago, hey, we're going to be publishing 400 pieces of content a month. How does that sound, Fonzie?
Overwhelming.
Still sounds crazy to me. I don't put out that much content. Jeez, guys.
But it's happening, right? But it started with a Facebook Live. It started with 3 shows a week, right? And then from those shows, then there's a specific output, right? So we never, I think we never reverse engineer that. We said at a macro level, we did. I was like, hey, it was a 30-day goal, right? It was like, hey, we need to be consistent. How can we be consistent? The first thing was, let's go Facebook Live last year. Just one video, 10 minutes a day. Let's create that consistency habit. Once we go comfortable with that, okay, it's like, okay, what is the next stretch goal, right? And then when COVID happened, we're like, now we have the time and capacity to do the show, right? And that's what we do. So, okay, what's the consistency on the show? Can we do 3 a week, right? That puts us at 12 episodes a month. Can we do that? Let's execute. The same thing. It was like the month. And then the next month was like, okay, we mastered this. We built a system to sustain it. What next, right? And it built up to what we do now, with the 400 different pieces of content in different places a month. But it's like you said, it's step by step. And key there is like, don't go crazy, because when we first started, we want to be the Gary V's, right? 3 years ago, and we want to do the whole shebang. And we spent 3 years trying to figure it out. Right. It never happened, and we never executed. But it was like the 30-day. I think that piece there, it will help a ton of people. Where it's like, okay, what is your 30-day stretch? Once you master that, it'll say, stretch out again. What is my next 30 look like? And then relentless execution, I feel like.
Yeah. So I want to add to this, because right before we started the show, we were talking about your latest episode in your podcast, where you talk about Gary V's approach to content, right? That is just pushing a lot of content in front of people. And then the approach on Grant Cardone, which he does push a lot of content but he's more aggressive. I'm going to shove it down your throat type of content, right? And I know you have, I feel like you have your own unique perspective on content.
Yeah.
And I'm curious too, because you know what led you from all this security side of businesses, right? And military and the police to start your own content production company. And I see those, you already told me that they all feed into each other, but for me, those are very different side of a spectrum.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like what led you go into that side of things? And what are your views on content as well? Because I found it interesting what you share on that podcast.
Yeah, I love Gary Vee. Great dude. I used to love Grant Cardone, and he kind of got annoying, to put it nicely. And they're both, at the end of the day, what they forget to tell you is they both have 9 figures. They have a team around them. They have a videographer following. Gary's a lot more authentic in the quality of stuff he puts out. He puts out that raw footage. He's on a plane doing a voice recording. I love that about Gary. Yes, everybody can do that. But when you're talking about that much content all the time, I love his methodology of don't create, just document. So you document everything you're doing, but then you go back and you try to chop all that up, or you try to get like one good insight out. That still takes a ton of time where you're not documenting anything, but you doing that for the next 3 days. So for me, it's more about I love the word tactical, right? It's breaking it down to being actionable, where to me, there are 3 levels of business. You have operational, which is obviously up high. You have strategic, which is kind of what we're talking about with that 30-day strategy. And then you have tactical, and that's what do you do right here, right now? And for me, it's more about create that quality content. Y'all, I've seen some of the stuff y'all put out. You put that quality stuff out there, a little bit of production value behind it. You find a topic people want to hear about. It's not about 18 pieces of content a day. You could have one really great piece of content and it hits LinkedIn, and you just have to find that right platform. There's a little bit of science to it, right? But I love LinkedIn. I never had an Instagram until I had business. Facebook, I'm old enough. I wish we could go back to MySpace. But for me, like, I live on LinkedIn, and I'll throw posts on LinkedIn, and it's quality content that audience wants to hear. They see a little bit of production value behind it. That's where my content hits the best. And with that realization, I know how I need to shape my content, where I'm focused on LinkedIn, because not only is it a great platform for me, guess where a lot of my leads come from? I'm doing it in a tactical manner where I'm not just throwing content out there. What do I want to achieve with this content? A lot of content is cool, but again, if you don't have an end state attached to what you're doing, you're just creating noise. And I think Gary, unfortunately, has a noise consistency with him where he's creating a lot of noise, where I've honestly stopped ingesting. And that's even something he recommends. He's like, stop ingesting what I'm talking about and go do it. All right, cool, Gary, I did. And I'm not listening to your stuff anymore. Sorry, bro. But it's one of those, you got to take that action attached to go ahead and put something out, right? It could be the worst. Go back and listen to episode 1. And it's terrible on my podcast. Oh, it's so bad. Don't do that.
It's so fun.
But, that's what it is. Like, what's the end state of that one piece of content? What do you want to achieve with that one piece of content? What value are you providing with it? And then worry about that next piece of content.
Yeah. There's something. I'm sorry. I know you might want to say something here, but
you're good.
I love what you're saying about the quality, right? And for us, when we were starting and we wanted to, post like Gary Vee 80,000 times a day, we didn't sit down and think about his $20,000 to $40,000 per month team that he has behind all the content, right? So obviously, immediately we became overwhelmed. And what we started telling ourselves was quality of the message is more important than quality of the production. And that was the kind of like the mantra that we started living. And it changed everything, because now we were focusing on, okay, instead of making it look pretty, let's focus on delivering a quality message out there. And that started changing things. That's when we started doing the one Facebook Live every single day. But now we were focusing on what we were saying. And we discovered, guess what? If the quality of the message is there, people are going to resonate. You start, getting more business. And eventually, it will lead to an increase of quality of production. So for us, it's like, wow, that is incredible. And that's what I'm listening with you as well, right? It's like, you need to understand what your capacity is. And be honest with yourself and say, can I actually do this? And sometimes it's no. Sometimes you only have the time to write one quality piece of content a week, right? And I know this sounds a little bit contradicting because of the fact that we publish a lot, right? But the time that we spend now, we have a team behind us that help us. But mainly, the content that we create is this right here, is the podcast, right? The time that we invest is these conversations that we're having with the incredible guests, right? Just like you, Zach, and now we have our team on the back that they help us repurpose that in a way that we can share it in other platforms. And you mentioned noise, which is so cool, because not too long ago I was listening to Christopher Loghead. I don't know if you're familiar with him. And if you're not, and if you're listening and you're not familiar with Christopher Loghead, I definitely recommend him. He has a podcast. And I forget the name of his podcast, but he's the author of the book Play Bigger, and it's amazing. And he was talking about noise, right? He says, I hate noise. I hate people that just put noise in social media. And he said, I look for every single thing that I post to make a contribution, right? And I don't know if you noticed, but at the very beginning of the episode, when we were doing the sponsorship, right, which is a shameless plug way to, put our services in front of people, we said, if you want to amplify your contribution, right? Because we've noticed that in the market, repurposing is very tied to amplifying noise, right? It's like, okay, let me just grab a bunch of things inside of your message and just publish it out there. And me personally, I was like, I don't align with that, but I love what we do, right? And I do find value in what we do. And part of our system is to determine the right pieces of content that would actually benefit someone on the other side, right? So how do we amplify that contribution? Yeah. And I love it, because even though we are more high volume content, right? And you are on the side of, let me put the one piece of content that I know is going to be quality, right? It's kind of like different sides of the spectrum there a little bit. I think we both align on the sense of, we want to contribute to the person on the other side, right? Yeah. We want the person on the other side to get something out of it that it can move the needle forward.
Yeah, I also recognize a word here and a term that is framework. Like, you came up with your own framework, right? Mm-hmm. Like, how are you comfortable on executing your strategy, whatever that's business, content, whatever, right? Like, that was something that for us was very foreign when we started. And once we kind of took in that word and that term, and we started applying it to everything that we did, it really helped us move the wheel. And that's what I recognized from your story, is like, you came up with your own framework. You saw what works, and you continue to execute on what works, right? Like, we took, and we've shared this in other episodes, in our specific case, we changed our perspective to what if, right? What if we try these things, because we have the capacity and we have the resources to actually deploy it. Not a lot of people do. And on the business side, we can help with that. But when we changed our perspective, we started seeing these things, right? And that's what you did on your business too. So, even though we're on both sides of the spectrums, those things like that framework and your contribution, amplifying your contribution, is very important for every business. So whatever you sit, like, if it's one piece a day or X amount of pieces a day, like, are you really amplifying your contribution, or are you just making noise, right? Like what Ponzi was saying, right? Yeah. And if you are, because we truly believe that every single piece of content that's out there has a purpose and will touch somebody in a way that they can do take action, right? And I feel the same way with you, either that's one piece or 10 pieces. And that's wonderful. That's a beautiful thing about this role on the internet and what you're doing with these 6 companies and the impact that you're creating. Yeah. So thank you for sharing this amazing perspective and letting us challenge a little bit, because we love that.
I think is like, oh yeah, Zach, go ahead. Sorry.
No, please. I was gonna say, y'all are hitting it on the head, man. Like, you're talking about, y'all are at 400. I'm not at 400 pieces of content a month. I mean, that's a ton of content. And I think a piece of this that we should talk about is the limiting belief behind, my content's not going to be good enough, right? That's what I hear so much, is my content's not going to be good enough. It's not going to be the impact piece that I want it to be. So I'm just not going to put it out there. Or people aren't going to want to listen to me because I don't have anything to say. That is the exact thing that kept me from launching a podcast for several years, until I had somebody put a boot in my butt and say, you have leadership experience, go on a journey to learn more about it, and you're tactical. Call it tactical. I didn't name my show. Somebody from the outside said tactical leadership. There it is. Go do it. And then it all crafted from it. And one of the things I've taken, again, from the battlefield to the boardroom, sometimes so many people are set on focus. You always hear ready, aim, fire. You get ready, you take aim, and you wait and you wait and you wait, and then you take your shot. Well, I've flipped that, and it should be, in my opinion, ready, fire, aim. You get ready, you take that shot, and then you adjust course as you need to. And if COVID and 2020 hasn't shown that adjusting course is vital for people, go ahead and take that shot. Put out that first piece of content, because it gets easier. It gets so much easier as you get going and get in that routine, and you get over that limiting belief of nobody wants to listen to me, where people still don't want to listen to me, but it's cool. I have a podcast. I have a face made for podcasting. So, it works. And you just have to get past that, because a lot of people are so worried and tied up in that. Like, just get past it, start putting out that content, and it gets better. Like y'all said, that production quality continues to go up.
Yeah. And I found that interesting what you just mentioned, because one of the biggest benefits personally I've experienced through podcasting and just publishing in general is not the gain of an audience, right? Or the new business. Is actually the fact that now I'm more comfortable sharing my ideas, right? Whether that is in front of a camera or in an actual conversation in real life. Now I'm like, you know what? This is how I think now. I'm now able to express myself in a more clear way. And in a more clear way, in a clearly way. I think that's the right way to say it.
Yeah, your English is not very good looking.
My English is not very good looking.
It's okay.
But, Zach, like that, there's so many benefits that most people don't really talk about when it comes to publishing, which are huge, right? But people, I feel like they only see the side on like, oh, this piece of content didn't go viral. It didn't work out, right? And guess what? At first, I think it's actually how do you call it, an advantage that people don't watch your content, because then you can mess up as many times as you can and be comfortable with messing up, right? I mean, this is episode 124, Zach, and you heard the intro. You heard the mess that my brother became on the intro, right? Guess what? If that would have happened on the very first episode, on the first 10 episodes, we would be sweating. We would have a mark in our shirt of sweat, because we would be so nervous right now.
There's a reason I wear a black tee. That's all. That's all I'm gonna.
It teaches you, right? It teaches you on like it's okay to fail. And now we don't even call them failures. We call them samples. We're like, let's grab a sample. Okay, what can we learn from this and move on from that? So thank you for bringing that point. That is amazing, and I love the whole content is not good enough limiting belief, because I think that's definitely top 3 reasons why people don't publish. So absolutely. I think we're getting towards the end here.
Yeah, so we have last three and a half favorite questions. 3.5. The first one of those is, with all your experience, with what you shared today. I mean, I think everything is incredible. But like this episode is full of golden boulders, and if you don't know, it's golden nuggets, but a little bit.
Yeah, so
that's our version.
So golden boulders are massive golden nuggets.
Just saying.
I'll take it. I'll take it. It sounds good.
Sweet. Awesome. It resonates. # golden boulder. Yes. Let's go. Thank you, Lucas. There we go. Okay. Anyways.
Are you going to ask the questions?
Maybe. I was just making time. Okay. No, anyways. Okay. Question. What would be your number one action point? Like for people to get momentum, to get going, right? I'm asking for those that are maybe stuck, like with their why.
We're asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend. Yeah, exactly. Maybe they're stuck in that journey of finding their why and they're not executing. What is the number one thing that they can actually do to get that wheel rolling?
Do it. Like it is literally, it is that simple. It is, to me, it is a decision in your head. Do or don't do. There is no try, right? And also, a wise old man once said that. But it's one of those that you just have to do it. The grind, keep grinding. I mean, we all have those days. And if you give up, that's where I don't believe in failure. You mentioned fail. The Army loves acronyms. Fail to me is first attempt in learning. And you just continually learn. So if that didn't work, just keep doing it, because eventually you're going to find something that works. So honestly, it's that simple. Just do it. # Nike. Wow. Sorry, guys.
Nike. We should all get sponsored by Nike. Just saying.
We love that brand. And another book recommendations, right? We have 2 so far in this book. So for those in this book, I mean, yeah,
it will become a book.
This episode could easily become a book. But another book recommendation will be Shoe Dog, right? It's a pretty good story for the story of Phil Knight, who founded Nike. So
Yeah.
all right, super tangent in there.
It cannot get as simple as that, right? Like just start, like if you're feeling that resistance, that might be an indicator that that's the one thing that you need to do. Yep. And we've learned that if we feel that, then let's tackle it. There's always a lesson, right? Like if it works, great. If it doesn't, great too. Like there's a lesson there, and then we move forward. It's just gonna bump us in the right direction. We know you publish, amazing. You explain a little bit like what you do about it. I mean, with all the businesses that you've done too, like the impact that you're creating is incredible. This is probably my favorite question, right? Like where would you be if you did not publish?
A cop on the streets of Atlanta still. Oh man, don't make me think about that. All joking aside, man, podcasting is the one thing that has been the biggest growth point in every one of my businesses. From my wife runs the nonprofit and that podcast. I ran this one. My business partner, I forced him to run a podcast for my creative district, where again, we're reaching people, the networking and the learning opportunities attached. Man, I've had people from Germany, Australia, all across Asia reach out to me to come on my show, where I would have never have met those people if I didn't have content out there, where now it's essentially just inbound leads, more or less. Like the funnel I've created attached to podcasting. It's like, I never look for a guest, because there's always somebody that wants to share their story of tactical leadership. And then it just turns into referrals and more guests and business. And end of the day, it's the best marketing tool I've ever used. Don't tell our secrets to everybody. Hang on. Can we edit that out? Is it too late?
We'll definitely cut this part out right here.
There we go. We got some comments coming in. That's me, power couple. Let's go.
There she is. Yeah, she's the brains behind the operation.
Let's go. And, we've shared many times, like, this is the one thing that shifted everything. So glad that, when we had that experience, that to me was terrifying, where we lost about 80% of our business. Fonzie was like, dude, this is the time. We had those 5 episodes that we recorded about a year ago. Forget about those in the vault. We're never going to ever show that, maybe. But then he's like, let's get it done, dude. Following your action point, just go ahead and do it, man. Mm-hmm. We recorded the first 5 episodes. We did them live. To this day, 124 episodes live. Same with you. Like, we've been able to develop amazing relationships. So if you get out there, publish, get it out. For us, podcasting has been a great vehicle. For you, Zach, also as well. But it doesn't have to be a podcast if that adds friction to it. Find the thing, right? And eventually, this vehicle allows you to develop amazing relationships, meet wonderful people, right? My wife is so scared that I don't have friends in Jacksonville, which I do. but then, like, every single week, we're making creating this amazing relationship with 3 amazing guests from all over the world, right? And the world just becomes smaller. And people are like, hey, you should meet this guy. You should meet that person. You should go and talk to that company. Opportunities just start flying from everywhere. So highly, highly recommended.
Yeah.
And I do have one. That could happen? I mean, at the end of the day, what's the worst that could happen?
Yes.
Like, nobody watches it. Like, who cares? Literally, what is the worst thing that could happen? And once you embrace that, like, nothing bad could really happen from that. Once you embrace, like, okay, cool, nobody's going to watch my stuff. Now I don't have to be embarrassed. So I'm going to go ahead and put it out there.
Absolutely. We've actually found that you gain more from doing it and, like, the worst case scenario happening than from not doing it at all, right? Because, like, let's say you do it and nobody watches it, the connection fails, you do a technical mistake, everything, like you burn your office, whatever, but you still
record. Like, I've done that.
There's one lesson in there that you're gonna learn, right?
Yeah.
But in contrast, if you don't do anything and just stand still, nothing happens. And one of my favorite quotes is actually from Tom Bilyeu. He says, I prefer to move 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction than standing still. And it's because in that 100 mile per hour journey that he's taking, he's learning. But if you're standing still, there's nothing to learn in there. So before we say goodbye, I do have one more question. So you said the number 1 characteristic of a leader is being vulnerability. What is the number 1 characteristic of a tactical leader?
Not just being vulnerable. That's a great question. Not just being vulnerable. Vulnerability is great, and you can be vulnerable, but it doesn't do anything if you don't act on it. We've talked about action the whole time. You can be vulnerable to yourself, You can be vulnerable in the mirror, but until you share with people around you that level of vulnerability, you'll never realize how many people are going through that same thing. So when you share your vulnerability, you're impacting so many people that you don't realize. And that goes back to publishing stuff, right? It goes back to podcasting. When you're vulnerable and you're a tactical leader and you're vulnerable to those people around you, your team, your subordinates, whoever's around you, and you show that vulnerability to them, that in of itself is tactical, where they're going to be able to correlate, buy into your mission, buy into your message, and really be a part of that overall growth that you're wanting to achieve.
I love it. And I know I quoted a little bit of Christopher Lochhead in here today, but he says marketing inside of your company is as important or more important than marketing outside of your company. And I think that is the job and what you just described as a tactical leader, right? Being vulnerable with your team members too. It is part of marketing your own company. And I'm going to translate that, marketing your why, right? And passing your why down to your team members so you can all grow together. So thank you so much. I love that.
Zach, where can people find you? Where can we learn more about you? Where can we listen to the amazing voice that you got? Like, I wish we had this podcasting voice that you have. And so where can we find you?
Yeah, the easiest way, across all social media, it's at Be a Tactical Leader. The website's beatacticalleader.com. I host the podcast there. And then me personally, you can find at Zack Knight across all social media. Easy to find. And my phone number is actually my cell phone number on there. I love to have a direct connect, or reach right out or hit my Calendly, get a schedule called with me, and I'd love to hear from folks.
Hey, well, I'm definitely gonna take on. I'm gonna put your number in my phone, and then whenever we go
not you, hang on, not you.
No,
yeah, I'm sorry, man.
I was gonna say whenever we go to Georgia over there, I'll be like, Zach, I'm here.
Absolutely, definitely, we'd have a good time.
But I won't be calling you at 4 a.m. in the morning. Just throwing that out there.
We'll go to the gym. It'll be good. We'll be good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he needs to look at this one.
I definitely need to go to the gym.
But Zach, any last thoughts that you want to share that we might have missed throughout the show today?
Man, I think this was a great conversation. I appreciate y'all having me, and I hope that the audience just takes the three of us at our word of, go get stuff done, put the content out there, and just keep driving forward, because it's going to win, and you're going to do well.
Absolutely.
Dude, thank you, Zach. And with that being said, guys, thank you so much for tuning into the Contents Profit Podcast. Go ahead and subscribe. Smash that subscribe button and follow us on social media at Beast Bros Go.
That is right. And if you find this episode impactful, which I am sure you did, because Zach was awesome, don't forget to share it and leave a 5-star review. Thank you.
Bye, guys.